Hi. How's it going? It's been a minute. It's been I think probably somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks since my last live stream, and a lot has happened since then. Um, Welcome everybody coming in. I did there's a cat with us. That's that's Tommy back there. It is the middle of the day here in Minneapolis, which is usually when she is sleeping. Um, anyway, so for the few poor souls who haven't seen any mention of this on my social media, this is a stream where I'm going to talk about my recent hospitalization. Um, and I'll get through that as quickly as I can because I was always planning on doing a big stream in July to talk about all the films that I discuss or all the films that I watched in June for Pride 2025. So I do have a big list of films that I want to talk about, but there's also this my hospitalization is interesting enough of a subject to discuss it in a live stream, I think. Anyway, um, so what have the last 6 weeks of my life been like? So I woke up on sometime in mid-June, uh, June 13th, with a phenomenal level of exhaustion. Like I could barely stand. I knew there was a problem. I knew it was something more than just a cold. Um, and so I went to urgent care. Uh, and my cat was battling an infection. My newest cat, Leona, who's just a little baby, she just turned 5 months. Um, she was in medical quarantine after her adoption, and so I suggested to the urgent care doc that maybe I call it what she has. And he was instantly like, It's harder to catch a disease from a cat than you'd think." Um, so he just prescribed what he kept calling brat diet. He said brat diet 3 times before I was like, "Excuse me, for those uninformed, what is brat diet?" And he's like, "Bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast." So I muscled through another week. Um, it helped that I think it was the 13th, June 13th, because that I remembered being Friday. And so I had 2 days to just go home and nap. Um, and I had a big important week at work the following week with an especially big thing happening on Friday. Um, and so I went into work. That would have been June 19th, I think. Um, and I still had the exhaustion. The exhaustion kind of abated with a weekend's worth of rest. And then I had the 19th off. Um, but then on the 20th, I woke up with the same level of exhaustion where I could barely stand. Um, and anyway, I'm gonna try to speed up the story. I went into work. I did the big important thing that morning. Uh, but by like 10, 11, I noticed that I couldn't type. I mean, I could physically hit keys, but I would sit down to compose a sentence and gibberish. I would type gibberish. And um, I could look at what I was typing and I recognized it as gibberish. I recognized that it wasn't what I was trying to type, but I could not type the words I did want to type. Um, and so I went to my supervisor and I had this big speech prepared um, with like a full explanation and a full timeline of symptoms and why I thought I had to go home. But when I got up, when I met him, I just looked him in the eye and I was like, sick, me, home go I. And he was great. He was fantastic about it. He was like, oh, anyway, you don't have to know all about my anyway, he was just like, "Okay, go home, feel better." Um, so anyway, uh, I remember getting to my car. Um, I was in communication with my partner. I've looked at the texts that I was sending my partner that day. I was telling them that I wasn't feeling well, but it was also like autocorrect was doing a lot of heavy lifting. I could not type words properly. And I remember my partner calling me just as I reached my car, and my partner was like, "I'm worried about you. Your texts aren't making sense. I think you should come home." And I remember telling my partner, "I'm at the car. I'm coming home now." And that's where my memories end. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember, but anyway, what happened? What I'm told by my partner is, I got home and I was making jokes, but still exhausted and saying like, "I need to go to bed. I need to sleep this off." And I slept for like 4 hours. And when I woke up, my partner could tell that I was still not myself, still not making sense. And my partner was like, "I think since there are neurological symptoms, we should take you to the hospital." Um, and I agreed, and then promptly tried to put a hat on my foot as a shoe. Um, so anyway, uh, I wasn't sure how to tell this story either chronologically or as information came to me, because like I was at the car and I was like, "Okay, I'm coming home." And then my memories pick up 5 days later when I pull a feeding tube out in the hospital. Um, and, uh, uh, I open my eyes and I'm in a hospital room, and I felt it didn't feel too disorienting. I didn't feel confused, which surprised me. I was just like, "Okay, I'm in a hospital room. It got bad. Um, it got a lot worse than I thought it was. My partner got me here somehow." Um, and my partner was there when I woke up, and was my partner was telling me things like you're at the hospital, um, and it didn't feel like new information. And then later, my partner told me that they were telling me all of this while I was unconscious for 5 days. So something was getting through. um, anyway, um, then my parents walked into the room, and my parents live, you know, like 2,000 miles away. Not 2,000. I think it's like 1,300 miles away, 1,400 miles away. And when they walked into the room, I was like, "Oh, it got bad, bad." I keep joking. I was like, "What, is there a priest out there too?" My coping mechanism throughout this has been to make jokes. Although lately I have been trying to scale it back because I don't think it's fair to my family for me to joke through my recovery, because I was asleep for the scariest parts. They were not. Um, my partner showed me pictures. I had the whole shebang. I was intubated. I had a feeding tube. I had a machine breathing for me. I had like 10 machines hooked up. Um, like I had IVs in both arms. I still have I don't. I'm about to show you an injection scar. So if anybody has an issue with that, you might want to look away. I don't think it looks gross, but if you have a particular issue with that, I'm about to show it. I don't even know if it'll show up on camera, but that right there is where I had an IV in me, because I was sedated for 5 days, but I was in the hospital for 7. Um, After I woke up, they monitored me for 2 days to make sure everything was going okay. I still have, um, I don't think this will show up on camera, but I still have bruising here from where the IV went in, and I have it on the other arm too. Um, they hooked me up to a Zoll machine at one point. I had no clue what a Zoll machine was, but it's a needle goes into the thigh, into the femoral artery, and they thread it up to the heart, and they pump chilled fluid through this little pipe. And as your blood flows over it, it cools your blood down because I had a fever of 105. That's that was I guess that was the most medically significant part. Um, I had a seizure, one seizure, the night I was admitted. Um, so my partner got me there just in time. My partner took me to the hospital, and then it was the nursing staff that was like, really think we should get him into the ICU. And I was already, they expected me to get worse before I got better. And so I was already hooked up to a ventilator and a feeding machine, a feeding tube, when I had the seizure, apparently. Um, so anyway, I'm going to be drinking water regularly throughout this stream because regular viewers know that my voice tends to dry out really fast, and I'm still not over. My throat is always dry right now because I was intubated for 5 days. Anyway, I usually resist um what's it called? I don't like people making a fuss over my health, and I don't like telling people to change their routine. Anyway, the point is that I was surprised when my partner told me that I offered no resistance when they suggested taking me to the hospital. That sounds like something that I would resist, and apparently I didn't. Um, uh, Collect T says in the chat, the moment you said you couldn't type, I was like, oh, shite, it's a brain thing. Brain things are the scariest things. Yeah. Um, I think the thing that I recognized on some level that made this serious was neurological symptoms. It's one thing to be exhausted or have digestive issues or to all that stuff, but I could tell I had neurological symptoms before that's why I went home really from work early that day, is because it was like not just that, like, I need to be able to compose an email to do my job. I couldn't do my job, but also the indication that there are neurological issues means it's okay. It's time. It's high past time to see a medical professional. Anyway, um, Nonsensical Compound asks a very good question that I was getting to. At what point did you or they figure out the cause of the illness? So they didn't know what the deal was. My partner kept having to clarify for the ICU team he doesn't have a history of seizures. He doesn't have neurological problems. He's in otherwise decent health. But what had happened was, they're going through the standard checklist and they're asking more and more and more questions about what it could possibly be. And one of the questions was, has he been bit by any bugs? And it was like 2 weeks earlier, I actually found uh, 2 bug bites on my, like, around my solar plexus. And it was after a walk. We go for walks frequently, probably like 3 or 4 a week in our neighborhood. Um, and we'd come back from one day, and I was like, "Oh, man, something bit me. Dang it." Um, and so my partner was able to tell the nursing staff, the team of doctors. They were like, "Actually, he was bit by a bug about 2 or 3 weeks ago." Um, in order to get a proper diagnosis, they had to do a spinal tap on me, which again I was asleep for. Don't remember a thing. But it is one of the lingering symptoms of my hospital stays. I can still feel it whenever I stretch, rotate my torso. It's still sore. It feels like somebody gave me a good solid punch right in the spine. Um, but anyway, they did a spinal tap and they checked for this battery of insect-borne diseases, and they couldn't find, how did they put it? They couldn't find and spoiler alert, it was Powassan virus. That is what caused this. It is an incredibly rare, Uh, I think there were 57 reported cases in the United States last year, which, given the population of the United States, comes out to like 1 in 6 million people get it. Um, anyway, Powassan virus. They couldn't find any Powassan virus DNA in me, but they found um, the antibodies, which indicates that my body had been fighting it for several weeks. So that's why we think Powassan virus was actually the cause of all of it. Like way back in mid June, when I was like given like the brat diet diagnosis, he wasn't even trying to diagnose me. He was just like, given your symptoms, you should modify your diet in order to treat it. And so I was just eating those four things for a week. Um, anyway, they found Powassan antibodies, and the only way that you get those is if your body has been fighting Powassan, and all my symptoms matched up. So that's how they treated it ever since. Um, I'd also like to clarify it's definitely more than 57 people got Powassan virus last year. The only thing is that it's so rare that most people don't test for it. And lots of times the symptoms are incredibly mild or even non existent. So the only Powassan cases that get reported to the CDC tend to be the hospitalizations, the ones where the infection gets so serious that they're doing spinal taps to figure out what the hell is going on, which was my case. Um, I actually got I was the first case of Powassan virus in the state of Minnesota reported to the CDC in 2025. That is my. As soon as I got out of the hospital, I went to the CDC's page on Powassan virus, and it had 0 cases for Minnesota, and I would refresh it like 3 times a day. And it was earlier this week. I can't remember exactly which day, like Monday or Tuesday. Um, that it updated to 1, and I was like, "It's me." Um, so anyway, uh, yeah, that's what had that's it was Powassan virus from a tick bite. I fought it my nervous system, my, uh, immune system, fought it valiantly for about 2 weeks, and then I deteriorated incredibly rapidly, and my partner got me to the hospital, which probably saved my life. Um, no, I don't. I am still uncomfortable calling it a near death experience. Um, uh, it's possible that my immune system could have fought it off. Like it's like no medical professional has walked up to me and said you would have died if you hadn't been admitted to the hospital. Um, but I definitely could have without medical intervention. I mean, a fever of 105 and a seizure. Um, uh, anyway, I can't remember where I'm going with that. I'm just very grateful for my partner and my family. My parents flew up. My partner's brother flew up. They stayed with me in the hospital, and then for a while, um, as I continued to improve, my improvement, uh, because I was discharged 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago yesterday. And I've just been at home and I've been off work. My employer has been fantastic. Um, and my recovery has been very slow, frustratingly slow, I would say, but encouragingly steady, if that makes sense. Every time I introduce something normal into my routine, I don't do it well, but I feel better after I introduce it, if that makes sense. Um, the my I was what's it called? The most annoying part was probably the exhaustion level once I got out of the hospital. I was always ambulatory. I could walk as soon as I woke up, but I just get tired really easy. Um, but I'm already working out again. Um, 5 days, 5 days under medical sedation, and then 7 full days in the hospital. I lost 9 pounds. Um, would not it. I would joke that it's like it's the I've invented the world's stupidest way to time travel 5 days and lose 9 pounds. um, One of the things I wanted to mention was that I could tell I had neurological symptoms after I woke up. That like the brain swelling had to come down before I would be back to normal, because I could shut my eyes and it wouldn't be completely black. I would just see different things, which meets the definition of a hallucination. But I knew it wasn't really there. Um, Very grateful for all the symptoms that got thrown at me. Delirium and confusion weren't among them. I always felt I never even felt like I was in much danger. Granted, I was asleep for the scariest parts. Um, but they'll never see this stream, I don't think. But like I'm just so thankful for my medical team and my partner for their diligence and their care, and hooking me up to machines before I even needed them, just on the off chance that I would go south, and then I did. Um, but anyway, I'm working out again. There are days where I have hit 10,000 steps on a treadmill already, which feels great. In fact, um, I've even teleworked a shift already. And it was very tiring. I didn't make it to the end of the day. I had to stop and nap. Um, and one of the things about the exhaustion that I find a little annoying is that the exhaustion doesn't hit me right away. It'll hit me the next day. So like yesterday I pushed myself hard doing the telework shift, uh, and then working out. And I could I could tell I was tired. But then I woke up this morning and I was like, I woke up, and an hour later I was like, I need to lie down again. Anyway, the exhaustion tends to hit me the next day, uh, which is um, it's only frustrating because I'm eager to tell people when I'll be back to normal, and that doesn't make it easier to predict. Uh, my employer, which I'll say for the third time and hopefully the last on this stream, has been fantastically sympathetic. Um, but I cannot suppress this instinct to predict when I'll be ready to go back, and be at full strength. And so I have attempted predictions like twice and then just like absolutely not met them. And so now my instinct is to just be like, I'm taking it day by day. That's the best I can do right now. Anyway, it was the nicest hospital room I'd ever seen, much less been a patient in. Um, I kept accidentally calling it a hotel room when I was there, because it looked like a Holiday Inn Express. They had a big screen TV in there, which I found a channel that was just running movies for like 24 hours, and I just left it on. I hate commercials. They show so many commercials. Like I haven't watched like cable TV in so long, and now I remember why. Because if they show 3 hours of a movie, there will be 1 hour of commercials. And I suppose it would probably be in poor taste if I asked somebody to run me a Blu-ray player and a stack of movies. But once I got home, it was like you can actually track this on my letterboxd. Weirdly enough, like my movie watching stops on the 19th and then picks up again on the 27th. Um, I wasn't logging the movies that were playing in my hospital room just because I felt like I couldn't even count as watching them because there were so many commercial breaks. Anyway, not the point. But the point is when I got home, all I wanted to do was watch movies. In part because I was too exhausted to do anything else. One of the first movies that we put on, I can't even remember what it was. You can check my letterbox for me and find out, but it was subtitled. And I noticed halfway through, I'm like, reading subtitles is knocking me out. Um, I have cracked open um, a book once or twice in this these 3 weeks following the hospital, and it's noticeably a lot more tiring than it used to be to read. I've written a little bit, just a couple of paragraphs. That too is exhausting still, which is a shame because I like resuming normal activities, and reading and writing were two big things. Anyway, so I'm eager for that to come back, but at least I can watch movies and work out. uh, and my appetite came roaring back too. Like I went from, even after the feeding tube was gone, I wasn't hungry, and it's because I hadn't expended I hadn't moved in 5 days. So I don't know how many calories I was burning, but the only calories I was burning were to maintain homeostasis and basic life functions. Um, and so for the first 48 hours after I woke up, people were like, "You want to eat?" And I'd be like, "Nope, not hungry." And then I did my first little teeny tiny workout. Um, and the next day I couldn't stop eating. Anyway, anyway, I should glance at the chat. Um, yes, Collectee says check your clothes for ticks. Um, yeah. After I got home from the hospital, my partner purchased a big care package of tick spray, tick ointment, tick removing tweezers, a tick removing, it looks like a credit card with a notch cut out of it that you slip around the tick in order to remove, but it stays in your wallet. We got all that stuff. My partner is looking into clothing that has been pre-treated with some chemical. It starts with a P. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but yeah, we called our we rent this place. This is an apartment. We called the management company and we were like, so I was just hospitalized with a tick bite. I don't know if you guys spray pesticides. And they're like, we'll come over and spray. And they sprayed like within 48 hours of my return from the hospital, which is great. Um, but yeah, I didn't grow up in tickless states. I grew up in South Florida. Every summer, we would like go spend a week in the mountains of Appalachia. I grew up knowing tick prevention, and one of the reasons I knew I got bit is because I was just not even thinking about it, but I was just like autonomically checking for bites of any kind. And I found them. I was like, "Oh, I have 2 bites here on my stomach." But, the ticks were long gone. They were just the red circles. So there was no treatment at that point. It's just like, "Well, I got bit." Um, anyway, Veronica says, "What an experience going through the whole process while unconscious and gradually discovering evidence of everything that happened to you in your body." Yeah, it was weird to be to I'd look down and I'd be like, "Oh, I guess I have an IV in me." And then I'd look at the other arm and I'd be like, "Oh, I guess I'm on more than one IV." And then I find um it was that like my throat hurt and I was like, "Oh, that's cuz I was intubated." And I find like this puncture mark on my thigh and I'm like, "Oh, that's cuz of the Zoll machine that they told me about." Um didn't even mention the catheter. Woke up with a catheter and I was like, "Okay, that is the one thing I am not going to," cuz I'd like scratch at my IV or I think before I was 100% cogent, I think they told me that I was like grabbing my IV and not trying to yank it out, but just like moving it. N- n- d- I don't know, just touching the IV. And they had to put mittens on me for like an hour while I became fully cogent, and then I was like, okay, I know not to touch that. Um, but yeah, there was a catheter, which I did not touch. um, I wasn't in a lot of pain. Uh, I wasn't in any pain really. I don't know if they gave me pain meds, but I just mean to say that like whoever was putting in my IVs was very good at finding my veins. Anyway, wow, user wow says this is why hiking scares me. I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I've been hiking my whole life, and this is literally the first time any wildlife has caused a complication with my health. And now that it's happened, it probably won't ever statistically. What are the odds that what are the odds that something like this is going to happen twice, right? I have been joking about buying a lottery ticket so long as I'm beating 1 in 6 million odds. Although I think winning the lottery is the odds are much more remote than 1 in 6 million. Anyway, J.R. Grimm says we live in Oklahoma and Powassan virus is one of the many horrors that ticks bring to our rural homestead. Yeah, I bet. Uh, Grimm also says you were definitely not near death. Yeah. Collect T says if you're not comfortable calling it that a near death experience, then we are very comfortable calling it that. Are you hearing yourself? Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's 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 weird to fear something after it's not a problem anymore. Um I'll probably write a screenplay about it someday. Do, do, do. Nonsensical Compound says, "What is a hospital if not a very complicated hotel?" Food was pretty much on par, which is not a compliment. Hotel, I don't know. Maybe it's just that I don't stay in fancy hotels, but they did have this particular hospital had a menu that I could like anytime I wanted anything. I could be like, I would like the pancakes, the scrambled eggs, the sausage links, and a fruit cup, and they'd bring it right up. But it wasn't great quality. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm not complaining about my hospital. they uh they kept me alive. Audrius says, "Yes, you've timed the stream for UK people." I do. I try not to change the date and time too much, just because people, I don't know, just so that if people want to make time for it for the stream in advance, they can. But I was excited at the prospect of the UK can tune in that whole time zone that doesn't usually get to tune in when I'm hosting these at 6 p.m. Central Time in America. Anyway. Sarah Mack says, I was in the hospital for a couple of days and they had Turner Classic Movies. I didn't want to leave. I think my hospital did have Turner Classic Movies, but I don't remember them showing movies while I was there. I don't know. Piscean Beauty says, just tuning in. The little I'm hearing sounds harrowing. I'll have to watch from the start. Yeah. I can't I can't emphasize enough though that it was like it doesn't feel like I lived through a trauma yet. I'm sure that feeling is coming. But it's my family who had to watch me intubated and had a I had like my partner took pictures of me while I was out, and they knew that I would want to see them. Um, but yeah, I just have pictures on my phone right now of like the ventilator and the breathing tube and just me being unconscious on my side. for days at a time, and I've seen one person deteriorate like that in the hospital, and it's it's not a competition, and it feels crude to compare. Um, it's not like the point is to try and figure out who had the worst experience for it, but it's the sort of thing that, like, I feel like my family needs to recover in different ways, but my family needs to recover as much as I do. Um, anyway, Nonsensical Compound says you were on 2 IVs. So 1 XIII. I appreciate that. Evan Sizemore says, glad to hear you're doing better. Be patient with your body as you recover. Take your time. Hope to see more Godzilla related content from you in the future. Me too. I do still have long standing plans. Like, I made a video, I think it was in 2018. No, I think it was the last video I made before quarantine. So it's like between 5 and 6 years old. I did that review of the first 15 films in the Godzilla series. And I've always had plans to go back and do first the Showa, and then a video about the Heisei series, and then a video about the Millennium series. It's just life has been very busy for you'd think the schedule would clear up in quarantine, but it hasn't. Like all the stuff that interferes with making videos became so much more prevalent after quarantine hit. And like part of it is I've moved cross country twice. Um, I moved to Seattle in 2021, and then I just moved to Minneapolis last year, less than a year ago. And then having to find new jobs in each city. Uh, and then illnesses. I don't know. You reach your mid 30s and people start dying, or battling life altering diseases, or getting major surgeries or injuries, and it just feels like there's just been there hasn't not been one of those things to deal with at all times for me in the past 4 or 5 years. Which doesn't make me different from anybody else. Everybody's dealing with everything, and that's not even getting into what's happening on like the national level. Um, the body wasn't built for 3 Trump elections in one lifetime, much less 2 Trump terms in one lifetime. So in addition to all of that, it's just been it didn't get easier in 2020 to keep making videos. I do love it though, so I'm always pecking away at it. I actually, I've been working very hard, if I say so myself, on what was going to be my next video, which was going to be a history of dinosaur special effects. And then after like 3 months of scripting, the script hit like 15 pages, which is like an hour and a half of video. And it was barely a summary of each special effects technique. So at long last, I was like, okay, I got to do these one at a time. I got to do 6 videos where each video is about its own special effect technique. And it became this really fun research project to zero in on one specific technique, which is no longer in use, which is when you take a live animal and you plop it down in front of the camera, often with like a prosthetic glued to its head or its back or something, so that it looks slightly more dinosaur-like. And it's always been a stupid technique and a cruel technique and a cheap technique. But it became an interesting research project to try and figure out, like, if everybody always hated this technique, where did it come from, and why did people keep doing it for 20 years? And I had actually ordered a I'd gone to my library before I was admitted to the hospital, and I asked them to order this out of print book written by the guy who did the special effects for Journey to the Center of the Earth and the Lost World in 1959 and 1960. He wrote a book about his techniques, and it was out of print. It's like going for a fortune on eBay. Um, and they got the book while I was unconscious in the hospital, and they waited like a week, and I didn't pick it up, and so they sent it back to its original library. And so once I got out of the hospital, I called him back and I was like, "Could you reorder it?" And anyway, um, I picked it up earlier this morning. Special effects, wire tape, and rubber band style by LB Abbott. And I look forward to reading it and incorporating this. This is a primary source. It's an out of print primary source, so it's exciting just to hold. But I'm going to be able to read it and incorporate it into the script from what's very likely going to be my next video, which is the special effects technique that I've been describing. Um, all the boomers in my life told me that I should make a video about my hospitalization. And they were specifically telling me how to monetize it, how to make money off of it, which feels, I mean, I'm not above accepting money, don't get me wrong, but it feels a little perverse to me, or crass, to paywall uh, public health information. Uh, one of the boomers in my life sent me what I'm sure is an AI generated pitch script to send to publications asking for money to write up my experience. And I was just like, this feels gross. um, with all that said, uh, one of the first movies I watched when I got home from the hospital was Ticks, which is this. I had seen it before. I grew up watching it several times. It's this low budget horror film from 1993, but it's a really well made low budget horror film from 1993, and like it would make a perfect episode of Schlock and Awe. Um, but I kind of want more of an angle on it, if that makes sense. I want it to be a bit more introspective. I want there to be a bit more of a point to it, um, a bit more of a justification for it existing, uh, than just a joke of like I was hospitalized by a tick. So let's talk about this movie Ticks. Um, but then that got me thinking. I do have a script gathering dust on the shelf that I had written uh, last year about tarantula films, back when I had a tarantula, and I was planning on having my tarantula sitting next to me on the couch while I watched 20 tarantula films and like talk to my tarantula about tarantula representation throughout history, uh, because it's changed over time. They've gone from like mindless villains to um, intelligent villains to finally much more sympathetic portrayals of tarantulas in recent years. And the reason I shelved that script is because my pet tarantula did not survive the journey to Minneapolis. Um, and I would still like to put out a video on that subject, but it was just, I guess it was too soon to come up with a different angle. Um, but now I was hospitalized by an arachnid, um, not a tarantula, but ticks are arachnids. They're in the same group as spiders and tarantulas. And my brain has kind of been passively thinking like maybe it's time to do a version of that video again. I just don't have a new angle yet. I don't have now that there is no tarantula to set down next to me and talk about tarantula representation throughout the years. I don't quite know how I would structure it anymore. But if I figure that out in a burst of insight, I might put that one into production. Anyway, so that's where I'm at in terms of next video. And ticks would probably feature prominently. I'm like ticks aren't tarantulas, but uh, I would have to talk about ticks after what's happened to me. Anyway. Golden Eagle Cinema Studios says, and I'm way behind on the chat. This is in response to something I said a while back, but I believe that technique is called the Slurposaurus technique, referring to when you put a live animal in front of the camera and call it a dinosaur. And you're right, Golden Eagle Cinema Studios, that is called a Slurposaur technique. It was really popular in the 1 million years BC movie, but it was straight out animal abuse. Correct and correct. Well, it was really popular in the film 1 Million BC from 1940. They did remake it in 1966 called 1 Million Years BC, but that one was primarily stop motion animation because they had recognized by 1966 that slurposaurs were an incredibly lame way to put dinosaurs on screen, Ray Harryhausen calls the one instance of a slurposaur in 1 million years BC a failure on his part, which are all things that I'm going to discuss in the video. I'm looking forward to discussing it because, like, we have special effects experts going on record saying that this was a stupid technique, and I think it's worth discussing why it was so popular for 20 years, 20 very specific years, like 1940 to 1960. That's pretty much birth and death of that technique, if you even want to call it a technique. Anyway, trying to get caught up on the chat. One of those things you never think about on extended hospital stays, library books. Yeah. And I have gone after and secured out of print primary sources before for videos. I usually just bite the bullet and buy them because it's helpful to it's useful for me to be able to highlight the text that I want to use. With this particular book, I'm probably just going to wind up photocopying a lot of pages and then figuring out what text to incorporate into the video later. Which is to say, I don't usually, and some of them, like the library literally doesn't carry them. Like there were some books on cryptids that I wanted to secure for my cryptozoology video 2 years ago that not even libraries have them. In part because they're like self-published in very small batches by these weirdos, and they're going used on eBay for like $1,000. And I was like, I guess I'm gonna go off of the quotes that I found on Goodreads, and that's about it. But this one, even though it's out of print, there was one library that had it here in Minneapolis, and I was able to get it from them. Anyway. Somebody with a very long username, a pizza that giant for the simple huddled masses, says, have you ever seen the film Lemora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural? I have not. I've never even heard of it. It's a 70s Southern Gothic shoestring vampire / werewolf film with queer undertones. It's also incredibly cheesy. It sounds like something I might enjoy. It sounds like something I would definitely give a chance to. But no, I'd never heard of it before. J.R. Grimm says my boomer family would absolutely monetize healthcare. Yeah, it's weird. It's like I don't know what it is about. Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned it, and I don't have any further analysis. But yeah, every boomer who's been told why I was in the hospital, any direct communication with me has been about how to make money off of it. Whereas every millennial who's heard the reason for my hospitalization is just like, "Are you okay?" The boomers ask if I'm okay too, but then they immediately pivot to money. J.R. Grimm says, "Ticks, surprisingly enjoyable, albeit disgusting movie." Y Correct and correct, yeah. It's a great little gross creature feature. Um, the, it's been released twice on Blu-ray. The first Blu-ray is out of print. I can't remember the price offhand, but it's more than you'd wanna pay for a Blu-ray. But then, I think it's Vinegar Syndrome came out with a 4K in the past few years, and it's expensive. It's like 30 bucks, somewhere between 30 and 40 bucks for a 4K Blu-ray of a film that is not a masterpiece. I think it's a masterpiece for what it is, but it's not the sort of thing that you wanna watch, like, twice or 2 or 3 times a year. Um, but Vinegar Syndrome goes all out with special features. They basically have, like, a whole documentary worth of material about how the movie was made and how you might go about making a similar film. Uh, and, anyway, if anyone should own Ticks on 4K, I feel like it should be me. Anyway, um, Piscean Beauty points out, "I don't think monetizing healthcare scares on social media is a generation specific thing, is generation specific." And you're probably right. I'm sure there are a billion TikTokers out there who would kill to be hospitalized by a tick so that they could turn it into clickbait. Um, I just found it in particular, I found it odd, the response that the boomers in my life had to this, because this is the only it's the only time they've ever offered advice to me on how to make money off of a video. Like, they had no interest before, um, a tick hospitalization. Anyway, uh, a Pizza That Giant says, "Maybe you could dedicate the video to your tarantula." Um, yeah, if I could, that wouldn't necessarily be a reason for me to make the video, um, but it would be something definitely to consider and incorporate. Anyway, I hate the idea of turning my own personal life into any form of content, frankly. Like, the only reason I've been talking for 53 minutes about this on my channel is because I do consider this public health information. Um, it's basic tick safety that we talked about. I think this is worth disseminating. But otherwise, I have so little interest in turning my personal life into content. Um, the way that I want to do that is by selling my spec scripts and my spec scripts getting turned into films, because those my scripts are so much more personal than my video essays. My video essays are what I think about when I watch film. My spec scripts are what I'm grappling with as a human being in my heart and my head when I can't sleep at night, if that makes sense. Um, yeah. Alicia says, "This is why I have both a city and county library card." I just called the library closest to me, and I was like, "I don't know how interlibrary loans work in this particular state, but I'm looking for this book. Can you do that?" And they're like, "Give me a second." And there's typing, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yep, we'll get it for you." Well, I don't know. They couldn't offer me a time estimate, but they were like, "Once it arrives, we'll email you." So they were great. Golden Eagle Cinema Studio says, "I remember you talked about ticks in the Jaws ripoff video. Biggest foreshadowing in YouTube history." One other idea I had, I haven't even put pen to paper. I have nothing written down about this. It's just an idea in my head. But my Jaws ripoff video, it wound up being, much to the comment section's furor. Um, not a video ranking Jaws ripoff films. It turned into a rant about how difficult it is to find a certain era of film and certain genres of film um, to watch, just in a non-degraded format. Um, and one of the ideas I had is that since I made that video, which is almost a decade old now, almost every single one of the films that I mentioned has come out at least on Blu-ray, and most of them are now on 4K. I think Alligator is in 4K, Orca's in 4K, um, and a few others. And I was thinking, what if I actually come back to that idea and actually rank them now that I don't have to rant? It would be a celebratory thing. I'd be like, guess what? They're all on Blu-ray now. The industry got a little bit better in this one regard, and that's worth celebrating. And so let's actually talk about these films. Um, and I would Tix wasn't in the running. It was I mentioned it as a creature feature from the 90s. Uh, but it wasn't in the running because I don't consider it a ripoff of Jaws. It is an eco horror, but there's very little connective tissue to Jaws there. Uh, but I would definitely make it like an honorary inductee. In fact, you might have just convinced me, and I might have just convinced me to take that. I'm gonna write something down. I'm gonna open up a Word document this weekend and title it "Best of the Jaws Ripoffs Redux" and see what comes out of my head and see if that isn't worth making another video about. Anyway, thank you for that. A Pizza That Giant says, I had to physically restrain myself from digging into the 50% off Criterion sale at my Barnes& Noble today. Yeah, I saw that sale too. I think I've acquired 10 Criterions this year. I don't know. Some of them were I actually placed a big movie order after I got out of the hospital. I don't know, something about I got out of the hospital and was like, I don't know. I was like, I want to buy some movies. And so I did. I have no more deeper analysis than that. JR Grimm says they have to go. I have to go, but I'll watch later because listening to you talk is a very grounding hobby. Thank you. Thanks for sticking around. Nonsensical Compound says, for what it's worth, the lowering fever by chilling the heart via femoral artery tidbit alone is a solid PSA to scare me into checking for ticks. Yeah. The most frustrating part for me is that I did check for ticks and it still did nothing. Like I found the bite marks. That was helpful though, diagnostically helpful. In that I told my partner that I found them and they were able to tell hospital staff, yeah, he got bit by a bug. And so that was able to, they were able to narrow down their differential diagnosis. Anyway, Collectee says, healthy approach to content creation. There are things other people simply don't need to know. Yeah, it's, I don't want to be more interesting than my work. Yeah. Veronica says, I know this is going to be totally off topic, but I was really interested in your video about Paul Verhoeven. I did my PhD research on rape in Hollywood cinema. Wow. Yeah. That Paul, first of all, thank you for the praise for the Paul Verhoeven video, but in particular, um, that Paul Verhoeven video was an attempt to recalibrate the the kind of I hate the word content, but the kind of media analysis that I was producing to be a bit more rigorous and a bit more not what anybody else is saying and a bit more um, tight and um, critically focused and making the points clearer and I don't know. I see the Paul Verhoeven video as a frame shift in my style, and so it's nice to hear praise on it. And that would be quite the PhD research paper. Feel free to send it to me. I'll probably read it. That sounds really fascinating. I can't remember everywhere that my email is listed publicly, but it's just coldcrashpictures@gmail.com. Um, or don't. That's fine too. I'm not expecting it, but you're welcome to. And Veronica goes on to say, I think that even though our perspectives on Verhoeven's use of rape in his films are totally different, I found your analysis very interesting. Okay, interesting. I will definitely look forward to reading it if you decide to forward it. Evan Sizemore says, quoted me, I don't want to be more interesting than my work. Gonna put that on a t-shirt. At that point, I feel like you're jinxing it though. Speaking of t-shirts, I'm wearing my Venom shirt, but it's because it's got an arachnid on it. I just and I would say this in any video that I made about the subject, but I don't hold it against ticks. I don't hold it against arachnids. The tick didn't want to be infected with Powassan virus. It was just a carrier. It was just doing what it was doing. It's an unfortunate convergence of evolutionary possibilities that produced this particular parasitic vector for the virus. Anyway, still like arachnids. That's I don't have a broader point than that. Okay. Oh, there is one sensorial thing I wanted to mention, which is when I woke up from the medical sedation. Uh, the first thing I noticed as an indicator that time had passed, that a lot of time had passed, I looked down at my nails and I was like, my fingernails are too long. Um, and then one of the first things my partner tells me is that I've been out for 5 days, and I was like, that explains this. I don't know why I fixated on that. It's just because it was like the first thing I noticed as an indicator that time had passed. Anyway, so it's been an hour. I can tell I've been hydrating, but I can tell my throat is starting to get a little rough, and I do want to talk about Pride Watch 2025, which were all the LGBTQIA plus films that I watched in June. I did go ahead and extend my watch into July, the first 2 weeks of July, just because of how wild the month was. It wasn't even just getting hospitalized. The Florida Panthers went to the Stanley Cup and won it in, like, I think it was game 6 in the first half of June. So that was like several nights taken up by hockey instead of the Pride Watch. Anyway, point is, I watched as many films. I extended it 2 weeks into July. Goteeks asks, were they movies that came out recently or just any queer theme movies? It's any queer theme movies. In fact, I tried to get a wide breadth of. The earliest film that I watched this month was from 1931, and the newest, I think, had just come out. Anyway, my voice is starting to go, so I'm not gonna dedicate like another hour to this, but I do want to get through the list for posterity and to recommend a lot of them, because a lot of them were really good. Um, people keep asking me questions about what kinds of queer movies I watch. So let me just start going. I started off with Far From Heaven, directed by Todd Haynes from 2002. I don't think my you can kind of see my phone screen doesn't show up great on webcam, but I'm a pictorial person. you might say Far From Heaven to me, and I'll be like, "What?" And then show me the poster and be like, "Oh, right, I remember that one." Anyway, Far From Heaven, it's weird. Far From Heaven is like a film. It was made in 2002, but they wrote, shot, edited, directed, costumed, and performed it as if it had been made in the 50s. Um, which is an interesting experiment. Um, it was fascinating. Uh, and I also think the aesthetic experimentation helped make up for a script that felt, it was almost like, in keeping with that style of this is something that could have been made in the 50s. It felt like the script was written to not appease the Hays Code, but to get, at least get past it. So it wasn't as meaty as I was expecting. It felt like they were, I don't know. It's not a fault of the film. It was just something I wasn't expecting after hearing about it for 20 years. Anyway, somebody wants to know my letterbox profile. It's Cold Crash Pics. They didn't allow one as long as Cold Crash Pictures, so it's just Cold Crash Pics. Okay, moving on. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about each film, just because my throat is already running on fumes. So the next film I watched is called Score, from 1973. The poster on Letterboxd is blurred out. It's pixelized, because I guess it's because they consider this an erotic film, even though there's nothing erotic on the poster. Oh wait, Evan Sizemore says, "Sorry, gotta go. Roommate and I have plans to see the new Superman movie within the hour. Not looking forward to it. Good to hear you. Take care and keep up the great work." Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope the Superman movie exceeds your expectations. Um, I know two physical live people who have gone and seen it, and they both said it exceeded their expectations. So there's that. Uh, okay. So Score is it's from 1973. It is a what's it called? I guess it's technically a pornographic film, but it's very hard to find the cut that shows intercourse. What am I trying to say? I watched the softcore version of this film. And it's weird. It's very 70s. Um, it's it's about a married couple who are named Jack and Elvira, who have this bet about who can seduce this other couple faster. Um, and they're just sort of like, they're just like hanging out and swinging, and then they're like swapping spouses. And it's, I don't know. I gave it 3 stars, because I can appreciate what it is, even though it's not necessarily the sort of, there wasn't enough of a, how do I put this? There wasn't enough of a plot for me. Um, but I could appreciate its energy. Anyway, um, some of these films, like Score, I'm having trouble summarizing my thoughts about it because I saw it 6 weeks ago. Um, and a lot has happened since then. So not all of my thoughts are as organized as I'd like them to be. Um, anyway, uh, do, do, do. Okay, sorry, I was just checking to see if anybody was asking any questions in the chat. Okay. Then next, I watched a movie called Princess Sid, which is probably one of the more obscure films that I saw. Sid is spelled CYD. I watched Princess Sid because one of the actors in my movie, Second Service, that I filmed in Chicago in 2016 and premiered in 2017, he has a very minor role in this film, and so I've been meaning to watch it. Uh, it's it's a cute film. It's fine, and for having, like, next to no budget, it's a phenomenal, um, achievement. I didn't quite get all of the artistic decisions, but that's fine. I can't remember I don't even know if that's worth saying because, like, when was the last time you watched a movie where you understood every single artistic decision? Um, anyway, it's another movie where, like, I hate going around saying that, like, I'm a plot guy because that makes it sound like I couldn't enjoy a film without a plot, which isn't true. But a plot is a very convenient thing for a viewer to hang their hat on. Um, and this didn't have okay, I'll put it this way. It's difficult to make a movie about a character who doesn't know what they want. Um, it's why a lot of people love Shakespeare but hate Hamlet because Hamlet is a play about a guy who doesn't know what he wants until like halfway through the until halfway through the play. And this felt a little bit like that, but then it's a coming of age film. It's about a young high school kid who is like spending the summer or spending a period of time with her famous novelist aunt in Chicago. And I really like all the like the little granular details about like her aunt is a novelist and she teaches at the University of Chicago, and Sid is she likes to run, um, even though that's not the sport that she plays. And I don't have a ton of synoptic thoughts, and as I pull up my rating on Letterboxd, I see I didn't really present any thoughts on the film, um, but it's worth watching. You should check it out. I am not going fast enough for my throat. My throat is going to give out before I reach the end of this list, so I'm just gonna run through what I've got left. I watched Eight Women, or Wheat Femme in front. Okay, yeah, there's no way you can see what's on that poster. Um, but it's called Eight Women. It's a musical. It is an adaptation of a stage play. It's very weird. I could not dial into it. Um, it I want to join in the fun. Is